Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our final Let's Talk series on environmental justice. I'm Rebecca Cotto, the Director of Racial and Social Justice, and we have hit the end of our 21-day equity challenge. And I have an amazing panel. I'm going out with a bang. Well, we're going out with a bang, not me personally, but we have our the Honorable Lisa Blunt Rochester, our Delaware Representative at Large, here with us. We have Miss Dora Williams, who is a community activist. She was originally from Magnolia, North Carolina, but she's lived in the Route 9 area of Newcastle for most of her life, 2 children and 6 grandchildren, and she currently resides in Rose Hill Gardens, and she's lived there for 30 years. Wow. And as well as the surrounding communities, just being thy brother's keeper. In 2017, she volunteered advocating to pass the Colonial School District referendum. She became a member of the nonprofit organization called Newcastle County Prevention Coalition. And it's on that path that she met the Delaware Concerned Residents for Environmental Justice, who is our co-sponsor tonight. So we're so grateful for them. They actually put together this great panel. I have to give them kudos. And so welcome, Ms. Dora. And we have next Dr. Marva King. She holds an MPA from the University of Delaware and a PhD in public policy from George Mason University. She's a leading expert on and contributor to the efforts to promote environmental justice. In 2017, Dr. King retired from the Environmental Protection Agency, where she had long served in various positions, including advisor to the Assistant Associate Administrator for Environmental Justice and Community Revitalization, EG Coordinator in the Office of Air and Radiation, Senior Policy Advisor in the Office of EJ, Co-Chair of the Community Action for a Renewed Environment CARE Program, and Program Manager for the National Environmental EJ Council from 2018 to 2020. She served on the GMU Health and Climate Solutions team for the Robert Woods Foundation. Dr. King has earned numerous prestigious awards: the 2017 EJ Trailblazer Award, the 2010 EPA Gold Medal for the CARE Program, and the 2010 Children's Environmental Health Network Child's Advocate Award. Wow. And last, but certainly not least, we have Chief Dennis Coker. He's been honored to be the elected principal chief of the Lenape Indian Tribe of Delaware since 1996. In his keynote address at the Delaware's first annual Environmental Justice Conference, Chief Coker challenged educators to learn and pass on the Lenape view of the interconnectedness of all living things, the sanctity of the place, and the concept that man is but one small part of the web of life, not the center of it. Chief Coker's rare sensitivity for the balance of ecology, economy, and ethnicity makes him a valued member of many committees and task forces. So thank you all for being here tonight. That was a lot. Wow. We can all just go home now. So we're going to start off tonight talking a little bit about kind of why you're here, why you're passionate about environmental justice, and what kind of community did you grow up in? Were you were you exposed to nature? What made you kind of fall in love with that? And we're going to go ahead and just go in the same order that I just introduced everyone in. So if you wouldn't mind going first, Representative Blunt Rochester.
Great. Well, first of all, Becca, I want to thank you and the YWCA for your leadership in this important work to eliminate racism. I think we have to start there. And also the Delaware Concerned Residents for Environmental Justice for all of the leadership that you have put forward as well. Just for those of you who don't know, I represent you in Washington, D.C. Because a lot of times people hear representative and they might think, they might think council or the state, but I'm at the federal level. So I work on the laws on the federal level. And I can tell you, when I thought about this question about as a kid, how did I first come to know nature? How did I first come to know this planet? And if you take it all the way back, I just remember being a very little girl, just looking out the window and watching the sun. It's ironic that the sun is streaming on me right now, but I remember seeing the little dust in the sun, and or laying on the grass and looking up after spinning around and falling down, and just looking up at the sky and feeling the grass. And from a very little kid, that was important to me. And I grew up during the 60s. And so ecology, this movement started. So we had like, don't be a litter bug and give a hoot, don't pollute. And it became a part of school for us, that, you didn't throw stuff out your car window and things like that. And it just stuck with me, this love for the planet. Now, mind you, I grew up born in the Philadelphia projects, Champlaw's projects. We didn't have a lot of trees. I don't even know if we had any trees, but there wasn't a lot of nature there. But we would go for family, like our big family picnic to Fairmount Park in Philly, or then we moved to Delaware, and my dad would just try to find ways to take us out on rides. And I just began to love this planet, and it has inspired the work that I do to this day, because I believe we're connected to it. We are a part of it. And if it dies, we die. And so that's where my love comes from for this planet.
Wonderful.
We're a part of it.
Miss Dora?
Well, as my bio said, I came from Magnolia, North Carolina, which is a farm. My grandmother and grandfather and I lived there with them. And so I became just like an earthly person, I guess, because I was on a farm, and it just, everything always seemed so big to me. So the universe and the planet and everything was really big, and we grew strawberries, and we ate off of the land. And so my grandmother had a small garden that she did collard greens and corn and different things. And the rest of the crops were pretty big. And I just grew up to love nature and to love the earth, pretty much. With the animals, we had all kinds of livestock. So I have been around it, and there was just no way getting away from it. So I just took it wherever I went.
Thank you. Dr. King?
So I would say that I'm a little bit of both of them, the Congresswoman and Ms. Dora. I grew up in a small village, like small town in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. My father was in the Air Force, and my father was stationed up there. But my parents really came from the Eastern Shore of Maryland. So every summer, I would come down to the Eastern Shore of Maryland to my grandparents' house, and they farmed. They had, at first you're fascinated as a kid about the hogs and the chickens and the cucumber field that paid the taxes on the land and all that. And then I go home, and then I often wondered, there's a little bit of justice in here too. I would go home, and I would often wonder why my dad always fished off the side of where the boats came in, off the side of the bridge. And I realized when I grew up, it was because there were so many kids. There was 8 of us. He had to find another way to help feed us, especially I have 5 brothers. So, I had to run to the kitchen table because they ate a lot. And so I had both. When I think about my childhood, it was really beautiful because I had both of those things in that. And when I think about environmental justice specifically, how I got to it was in a classroom at the University of Delaware. I didn't know that's what Chester, Pennsylvania was, an environmental justice community. I didn't know that I'd seen them all my life. I had to discover it in a textbook because Professor Silvers, I think he's retired now, he had us one summer take a textbook and said, just find something you want to write about. That's your, 80% of your grade. And I was thumbing through that textbook and saw this like maybe a 5-page chapter or something on a piece of a chapter on environmental justice, environmental racism.
Wow.
And I put the justice and the environment together, and I went home that day and told my mother, I have found what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I called her up and told her, she wasn't living with me then. And I realized that it struck a chord in me. I had, so I don't know if you heard of the National Law Journal Review. They had depictions, big depictions of people suffering from pollution and other environmental harms. And these people were poor. They were all walks of life, all races, but they were both, mostly they were poor people. And it did something to my heart. It touched my heart. Here I was working and not even thinking about the environment. I did a mid-career change, got a job at the EPA in the Office of Environmental Justice. They had just formed. And I went from there.
Wow. Yeah, one of the things that people had to read, or one of the links people could go to, was the EPA, and it had the timeline of environmental justice. So I was thinking, I wonder if Dr. King worked on putting this together.
Well, yeah, I was in the office. We
Yeah.
all had a hand in it.
So, okay, Chief Kroger, tell me, I think, how do you feel? When was the first time you were connected to nature? And why are you so passionate about environmental justice?
Yes, thank you, Beta. First, I must acknowledge that the place from where I speak today is in the original traditional homeland of the Sicanese people of the Unalastico clan of the Lenape diaspora. So I grew up in a small railroad town here in northern Kent County in the Cheswold area, and I've lived here all my life. So, being a leader in the indigenous community, or a indigenous community whose role in life was tasked by the Creator to be the protectors of the environment. That's the instructions that we were given by the Creator to the Lenape. So it seemed to me it was just a no-brainer that we get involved in the environmental justice and the justice for the environment movement, because we believe, culturally, that all living things are entitled to dignity, and if we can begin to approach our environment, and it's not only the animals and the human, it's the plants and the fishes and the mammals that swim in our oceans. Even our grandfather, the rocks, to us are a living entity. So they were given instructions by the Creator as well, and it's very difficult for them to fulfill their roles if we don't treat them with dignity. So I've been outside all my life. I've been a fisherman. I've been a hunter. Even when we were young kids, in the summertime, we were out of school, my mother would kick us out the door and don't come back till lunchtime, so we, in a rural setting, we were all in the woods and all over the place. So the environment has been very dear to me. And it saddens me to realize that there are many people who have never had that opportunity to feel the mud squish up in between their toes, and to see the animals in the wild, in nature. I was part of a task force a few years ago. It was called the Child in the Wild. It was an effort to try to get our kids back outside, and I think it was targeted to some of our inner city communities who have asphalt and concrete to look at all day long. But there's so much more to life. And I think that, if we can get back to nature, there are many lessons to be learned. So, I'm just happy to be part of this discussion tonight. And
Yeah, absolutely. I figured the answer for you is it's part of your culture,
Yep.
So most definitely. So Representative Blunt Rochester is only here until 6:45 with us. So I'm going to give her some time. I would love for you to talk a little bit about the Public Health Air Quality Act and why it's important, especially for Delawareans.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. First of all, it was really good hearing everybody's stories of their connection to the universe. And, I think each of us could probably go on for days just about that, because I started thinking about more memories as you talked. I was like, ooh, I remember my feet squishing in mud. Ooh, I used to have I had this big stick that when I was a teenager, I called it my stick of God. And I used to walk down to the creek by where we lived, which is funny because it was like right in the heart of the city of Wilmington, but it was a creek that ran through. It seemed big to me at the time. It probably is like nothing to others, but to me, I would just walk through and just felt like this, that's the thing about nature. When you embrace it and you love it, you feel the connection. And I think, even the work that I'm doing now, it is based on a place of, we talk about environmental justice, but it really is based on a place of love. When you love the planet, when you love each other, when you love animals, you don't want to see anybody homeless. You don't want to see anybody hungry. You don't want to see injustice. And so the air quality, this particular bill is a bill that I introduced with Senator Tammy Duckworth. And it was focused on the fact that I remember we read an article. Now, here we are in the middle of a pandemic. And the air monitors, the monitors that are placed out here to see how we're doing from all of the pollution, some places they weren't working at all. Some places they weren't even there. And so really our goal was to say that, we have got to, in order to make change, you have to have data. Without data, and that's what also happened with COVID. Even in our own state, we were collecting data for COVID on gender, we were collecting it on age, we were collecting on geography, we weren't collecting on race. And it turned out to be the biggest indicator. And so for me, I see this intersection between our health, our environment, jobs, and equity. And so this bill was really introduced, and it was through the work and of some incredible Delawareans who helped us to basically say, we've got to make sure we monitor the air quality. We've got to make sure that we expand on what we have as well. And this is just a first step, but it is a bill to help us to reverse the ongoing environmental injustices that we see. And a lot of times they happen in low wealth or communities of color. And so that we introduced this Public Health Air Quality Act to really, be, and it's a more expansive version than we introduced in the first term. We just reintroduced it. So I want to thank Delawareans who helped us. And again, it's to require EPA to expand and enforce that fence line monitoring at facilities that contribute to high cancer rates or other health threats as a result of toxic pollutants. And that's really it in a nutshell.
Wow. Thank you for that. Are we mentioning Delawareans? Are we talking Stephanie Heron and Michelle Roberts? And
let me tell you, I think I have some friends that are on speed dial now that are connected with my office. But have really, and I'm so glad. In my first term, I was on the agriculture committee. And I think a lot of people were like, why did you get on the ag committee? Well, they don't know Delaware if they don't know why I was on the ag committee.
Exactly.
But I was the first person in 120 years, which is hard to believe, to actually get on that committee. And again, there is a lot of
interest. From Delaware? Wow.
From Delaware, the first person in 120 years to get on the ag committee. And, to me, again, there is a real intersection there. And part of it was my growth in this area, but my first choice was to get on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is what I'm on now, because it's the health subcommittee, and I'm on the health subcommittee, and I'm on the environment and climate change subcommittee. And now, because of the relationships I have with great Delawareans that you just mentioned and the ones that are here, we're able to actually have an impact and influence on the laws as well as the dollars that can come to Delaware. So I got to thank the people here on this call, especially, because, and the ones that aren't on, but I know you know who you are, yes. Michelle and the others, for schooling me, even times when I don't know what we need to push. So thank you.
Right. I just think there was other hands moving you, because look how you moved and look where we are with this COVID. Yes. So it was other hands, more powerful spiritual hands moving you. in the right direction to do those committees the way you did?
Oh, let me tell you, you know how I feel. You know, I know that, and I remember before I got elected, I prayed, like, where should I be? How can I have the most impact on the most amount of people? And that's why it was really important to be on this particular committee. But I was on Ag Committee when we did the Farm Bill. And that was important for Delaware farmers. That was important for SNAP recipients. I mean, it was important for that time. And now, like, you're the wise, eliminating racism and empowering women. This is a good theme too for this moment as well.
It is. It is. I always knew how important my job was. I just never knew how relevant it would be. So thank you so much for that. And thank you. That is actually going to bring us to a little bit of our next topic. So the 21-day equity challenge, a big part of that theme was why we need to include people of color in this conversation and why we need to let them lead. When we talk about fence line communities, when we talk about actual real consequences of the way that we've been treating the environment, although that we are all affected disproportionately, those communities are affected. And so and I'll go to Dr. King first. Why do you think it's important that people of color, people who are really experiencing this, take the lead in this movement?
You know, they have to have the voice. I mean, they're the ones that are suffering the most. They're the ones that know what their community needs. That's why I said it hurt my heart when I first saw that expose, the National Law Review, that, you know, they're the ones who are fishing in the bad water. They're the ones who are scratching the earth, trying to do a farm in the bad earth. You know, they're the ones that are getting sick from this pandemic or syndemic because of the poverty and the stress and the institutional racism that pulls all of us together. And they're the ones at the bottom of the list who are getting the most help. Thank God Delaware has stepped up to certain people I won't name, but that I know made an effort to make sure 65 and older people of color got their COVID vaccine shot. You know, I just think that we forget as a universe that we need to meet people where they are. And that means you got to go into those communities and see what they think. Someone told me a long time ago, not related to an environment, they told me that you speak, as a young girl, you speak to that man on the street, even if you don't know him, because one day he could save your life because he knows those streets better than you do. And I've always done it. When I think about the first time I saw a National Environmental Justice Advisory public comment period, there was a lady there named Zuline Mayfield, and she was from Chester. And here I was from Wilmington, didn't even know how bad Chester was. And I was working the conference, and all I could do was keep running to the bathroom crying. When she told me how much they were suffering and Chester, when I read the first risk assessment by the EPA Region 3, what they did, I mean, there were Black people over there dying, walking around, dying. And it hurt my soul so much. So if you don't go and talk to those people, how are you gonna solve anything? Right. You can't. You gotta go talk to those men who are working in those factories and areas that was so polluted. They were bringing that stuff home to their families. Their children were dying. Their families were dying from it. You got to talk to those people. And I am so glad people in this movement, I was in the government, but I tried to do what I could behind the scenes, but I was so glad people in this movement stood up and never gave up. They kept pressuring people. And now I'm so happy that the Biden and Harris administration has taken the lead.
Yes, thank you. And speaking of those people in the community that have been taking this on, let's go to Ms. Dora. Talk a little bit about your struggle, you know, being a Black woman in this movement and having your friends and neighbors kind of go through all of these things, and maybe for a period of time, your voice wasn't really being heard. Hopefully now more than ever, but talk a little bit about that experience, please.
Well, now more than ever is correct. my first experience with environmental justice was at Rose Hill Community Center. And it was, oh my goodness, it was about 20 years ago almost. And they were having a meeting at the Rose Hill Community Center. My sister called me. She said, "We've got to go to this meeting." She said, "We just got to." I said, "Okay, pick me up." So we went to this meeting, and when we walked in, we were a little late, and people were hot in the conversation. And what the conversation was about, it was actually about a family that I knew, but I didn't know that this was going on. The mother had acquired cancer. The daughter acquired cancer, and the second daughter. And I was like, well, what is going on? And a pastor, Elder McDuffie, who also lived in the Eden Park and Hamilton Park area, he was there, and he had all this information. And it wasn't just that family. There was another family. I'm trying to, her first name is Diane. And I'm trying to remember her, Diane McLean. I can't remember her last name, but she was there. And now she actually suffers with respiratory problems. And all these people just kept talking about these things that were just happening out of nowhere. And people were just getting sick. And we listened, and I was like, how did this happen? How did it all come about? And so Elder McDuffie was talking about the soil. He was talking about the diamond materials that's right on Route 9 right today. And I understand, I haven't seen it yet, but I understand that there's new information about particulate matter. And he was just going down the line, and he was talking about what they found in the soil was some of the things were exact things that they found in cigarettes, and he was just going on, and I was like, I wasn't even aware of any of that, and I'm right up the street. So we listened to everything everybody had to say, and it's been a back and forth struggle, and we kind of continued it, but it was not continued in a way that it made a big difference. So much until recently we did a survey, and I met some of these same people, families that were there, and they were saying, they're still doing this, and they said, we've been through all this before, and they had been through it all before, but nothing was ever done. But now the story is changing. Things are happening. We're getting air monitors. Actually, I put out some flyers a couple weeks ago about being able to get an air monitor for your home. So things are getting a lot better. The talks about people, they're doing some land removal, and they put better soil back. That's going on in the Hamilton Park area right now. And they were talking about people selling and leaving. That has not transpired. It's at a stalemate at this point. But some people do want to leave, but others who have lived there for years and their homes are paid for, and they don't want to. Lots of our community people, as well as myself, we want to continue to age in place because that was our dream. That was our hope, was to age in place. And to have that taken away, which is all that you have, that's a big chunk of your life. Yes. And so it's hard to make that decision. And I don't think they really want to make that decision. Some have made it to, yeah, if they made it worthwhile for us to leave. But I think they were only saying that because the situation had gotten so poorly taken care of. But now that things are better, I think they might change their minds, even those that want to leave. Because I don't think they really wanted to leave. because when you've lived somewhere 50 years,
Yeah.
you know all the people, you know the neighbors.
Right.
It's not, lots of people have moved out, but there's some that have been there forever.
Yeah.
And they want to stay together.
Yeah. It's your community, your family.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they want to stay together. I mean, that's their legacy. That's what they're going to leave their kids, their grandkids. And the house that I live in was my mother's. The lady down the street, her house was her mother's. The lady across the street, her house was her grandmother's. So we have a camaraderie. We have a culture of how things and how we live and how we want to hand down our communities that we worked for. And most people work, they pay for their homes, and that's what they did with their money. They invested their homes. They didn't make a lot of money, but what they made, they invested it in a home. And now for somebody to come back and say, well, you know what? This is why you're getting sick. This is what, and now I have to find some place to go because everybody's getting sick or dying. And that's crazy. That's a lot. That's a lot for your brain to process at one time. Yeah. And to come back 15, 20 years later and say, hey, you know, this is not going anywhere, but now it is. And I like that it's not the end of the story, but I like the interim now. I like that little part where, you know, your intermission. I like that because it's a good forecast. You know, it says all is not lost, hope is not gone, and things are turning around. We got a ways to go, but we've got people who are willing to hang in there and to make things better, like Congresswoman and Mrs. King. And Chief, of course, he's down on the other end trying to meet us in the middle here. And so I think we can do it. I think we can make things better. And now we're in a comprehensive plan stage where we're trying to change the zoning. So things are looking up. They're really looking up. And when you look up all the things that Congresswoman has co-sponsored and sponsored with Tammy Duckworth and all these people, it's just overwhelming. It's like God, you're answering the prayers. You're actually answering the prayers, you know. So it was a long time coming, but you know, it's a redemption. So we thank God for redeeming the time.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Ms. Dora. So Chief Coker, from a indigenous, I mean, the indigenous people have always valued everything about the environment. And I'm definitely not sure that everyone else in our country, I'm not saying everyone else hasn't, but there's definitely a large population of people. So how does it feel to you now that now that we've gone where we are, that people are talking about it? Do you kind of feel like, Ms. Dora, that there's hope, or do you feel like we've lost too much? Or, you know, how do you feel about that?
Well, first, I must say that I'm encouraged that there appears to be, looking at this panel, that there's so many women involved in this EJ movement. You know, the Lenape were a matrilineal society. Our women actually were the decision makers in our communities. You know, you can't underestimate the power of a mother. So when you have these children who are suffering so much from these environmental concerns, it's only right that those mothers will stand up and defend their children. And, you know, we as a culture as well have to provide for 7 generations of our children to come. So, you know, that's an awesome responsibility to have to look 7 generations ahead to be sure that those children have the opportunities, have the tools, have the resources. And we don't refer to them as resources because we consider them our relatives, but to have those connections with those relatives so that they can have a dignified life. So I am encouraged, and I do believe that society at large is going through an enlightenment period. People are becoming more aware. They're getting more educated. They're getting out there, and they're not taking no for an answer, because there has to be another way. And that's the message I think that we have to get out there with this education movement. There has to be another way. I mean, we just cannot. What we're doing is just not sustainable. So that's why we as a community have become engaged in the regenerative aspects of our environment. We need to regenerate. Sustainable kind of leads you to believe that from this point forward, we can make it work. No, that's not going to work. We can't start from where we're at today. We got to go back 100 years and regenerate back to where we were 100 years ago. And then maybe we can move forward from there. So, I'm just so thankful that, there are people that are listening. There are voices that are being heard. We have a set of politicians like our representative Blunt Rochester, who is getting involved in this work, and including the voices of those women. I sit on a council of all women. I'm the only guy on the council, and believe me, they let me know. They put me in my place quite often, but it's all in love, as you would say. So I am hopeful. I know that our Mother Earth can certainly regenerate if we will let her. I mean, I read the other day that if all the animals were to die, the humans couldn't live. If all the plants were to die, the humans couldn't live. If all the little creepy crawlers were to die, the humans couldn't live. But if the humans died, Mother Earth would be just fine. She'd go on about her processes. And, so, that story that man did not spin the web of life, but it's just merely one strand in it. And what man does to the web, he does to himself. We have to get that message out that we cannot continue down this path. And, and I feel privileged in a way that I was raised in a rural community that didn't have that intensity of toxicity that, say, Chester has. I was looking at a map the other day of all of the Superfund sites that are in the Philadelphia, Wilmington area, and each Superfund site was a red dot, and the whole area was red. Philly, Wilmington, west of Philly. I mean, it's just so pervasive that we have got to change our habits. We've got to change our relationship with nature, because we are not dignifying ourselves. We have not dignified nature. And when those two things don't happen, then we're struggling to meet the mandate of providing for the next 7 generations. So I am hopeful. I know that we'll figure it out. And so I'll give it a big plus.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chief Cooper.
Becky, can I say something about hope?
Sure.
Because I was thinking about it when Miss Dora mentioned it, and then Chief Dennis just concluded with it. And I've been in work. I worked at EPA for a little over 25 years, and I feel the hope now. I mean, we struggled. I mean, even though we had pieces of the hope, with the Clinton administration and the Obama administration, I'm telling you, we still struggled a lot just to make it through and get our technical stuff out there for people to understand what's going on, educate people and everything. But when Miss Dora talked about hope, I was thinking to myself, yeah, finally we have some hope, because it was such a struggle just to get people to understand what these ills, the environmental ills and harms we're doing to these communities. I mean, they thought they were complaining, but sure, They were complaining because you were killing them.
Yeah, you were dying.
We were allowing them to be killed, and what I see, my hope that I see, that's where I really want to get to. My hope that I see is the fact that this administration right here and now are listening to people. They're listening to people who have been suffering. Like I said, you got to meet people where they're at. You got to talk to people who are in this, feet first. You can call them all kinds of names, low wealth, poor, whatever, but they understand what they have been fighting for. And it's so wonderful to me that they are getting a voice.
Yeah.
Yes.
I hope was stuck in my head too. I'm sorry, I got to jump in on the hope.
No, you're next anyway, so you can start with hope.
Well, because it is the word that stuck out for me. I just got off a call with Dreamers, and we were talking about, just the experiences they're having and how to maintain hope in this moment. And it's such an important word. First of all, when the chief talked about regeneration and about awakening, I think this is a very special moment that we must all seize in our respective areas. Like, everybody who's on this can do their part in this moment, be a part of the string of the web, your string of the web. And, the thought about 7 generations to come, everything that the chief is talking about is coming from this in a very humbling position.
Yeah.
Not that we are the center of the universe, but that we're part of it, and that's what makes it so beautiful. And I am doing the work that I'm doing. I have another bill called the Alert Act. Like, going back to the question that you asked Dr. King about, why it's so important to involve the community or communities, is because you get a better product. It's based on reality and not based on what you read in a book that's from 10, 20 years ago, or not based on what some scientist told you. No, you've actually seen it, experienced it, heard it, and you are proximate. In the words of what's his name from Delaware? He wrote Just Mercy, Brian Stevenson. Always uses the word proximate to get close to things. And that's the same is true with the earth. When we talk about our squishy feet, we're getting proximate to the earth as well. I am humbled to have been on this with you all. And I love it when I walk away learning something. And so, Becca, thank you so much for the opportunity to learn and to be a part of this. And I will be thinking about the 7 generations to come. And Miss Dora, thank you so much for standing in the gap for so many years. When I started years ago, I remember going to Sussex County and people not having clean drinking water, and to finally be in a position where I can help and be a part of that is very humbling. It's very humbling to know that people are afraid that there's a emission and it might pollute them, and to say, no, companies, you got to alert the community. You got to let us know what's going on. People want seats at the table. Like Shirley Chisholm, the first Black Congresswoman, said, if they don't give you a seat, bring a folding chair. Yeah. We're going to bring several chairs. That is my message. We are bringing several chairs.
Or the new one is you just build your own table.
Hello.
Hey, we say that if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu.
On the menu, yes. Well, I end by just saying, I know I have to jump off in 1 second, but you give me hope. You all give me hope, and I am so grateful. And many of us know, especially as Black people, without hope, you die. We must have hope. We must have hope. So thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this discussion.
Thank you so much for making time for us. It's always a pleasure to have you in I wish it was a real space, but I can feel your energy even on Zoom. So thank you for everything that you do for Delaware, for our country, and keep up the good work, and let us know how we can continue to support you.
I will.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes.
all. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh, well, that was nice. We can just end there. It is so nice to be from a state that people care, right? Like you can feel that people care, and that I can't imagine, I shouldn't say I can imagine, we've watched her work for so long, and now she's in a place where I don't think she ever thought she would be. But like she said, to have that privilege to be able to help people, that's amazing. Okay, so we kind of talked a little bit about, let me see. So let's talk a little bit about the pandemic and environmental justice, because I think that's really topical. If you guys want to talk a little bit about what that feels like in this time of, we can see, I think Representative Blunt Rochester even mentioned that we needed the data, right? And we didn't have the data when it came to people. We weren't collecting race, and it's always an afterthought. Oh, maybe we should check this. So let's talk a little bit about how you feel about the effect of COVID and the environment, and how those two are intersectional. I think Dr. King might have even provided me with this question, so I'm going to let her go first, and then you guys go ahead and weigh in.
Yeah. So COVID is very personal, right? So let me tell you from a personal point of view. We were talking before the official part of the show began, but I take care of my mother. My mother is 89, and all last year I wouldn't allow her out the house. I didn't know. You got all these mixed messages. You didn't know what was going on, right? So I know, as a fragile 89-year-old, she had to stay home. So I went out double masked, doing whatever I had to do, and I brought it to her, whatever she needed. And then I thought about the way all of us grew up. I grew up poor. Even though my dad was in the military, he had to go out he had to go out and on the side of the water and fish to help, give us enough food to eat that week. And all that stuff is in your body. The poverty is very stressful. It affects your health. I couldn't go to the dentist when I grew up. My father, the military brats like me, we had medical coverage, but we never had any dental or vision coverage. And so these things happen in your body. These things that, are doing things in your body is happening. And then all of a sudden you get this pandemic on top of that. So this is life. As you're growing up, and all these things are in you, you're susceptible to diabetes or blood pressure or whatever. All that's growing in you. Thank God I'm okay. But I know other members of my family are not. So then on top of that, you have the pandemic. And then on top of the pandemic, you have all these social issues, all this institutionalized racism, all these issues that are really damaging to poor people, Black people, Native American people, Latinx people. It's all related. And on top of that, they've been getting polluted for years. So how can we survive that without help? We can't. And then they don't tell us anything about this COVID, and people were scared. I was scared. I wasn't scared for myself. I was scared for my mama, because I know that was going to take her out if I let her outside. So when I think about all that, I'm hopeful now because we have the vaccine. I'm hopeful now because we have a person in power, President Biden, who has a plan, at least, to get everyone vaccine. I'm hopeful now because he started a process that works. I don't know where it's going to end, but at least it gives people hope that I may not die tomorrow. Think about that. We were thinking, I don't know if you guys, but I was thinking somebody in my family was going to die. Mm-hmm. And I was just very fortunate that didn't happen. Because I know other people had people in their families who died. And when you think about that, you think of it very in a personal way. Are they just killing everybody poor? Are they just killing Black people? Are they just killing Native American people? Are they just killing Latinx people? What are they doing to us? And that's why those kids were in the street, because I'm talking about Black Lives Matter now. That's why they were in the
I know who
street.
you're talking about.
That's why they were in the street. I wasn't in the street. I'm too old to be in the street.
I was in the
I put
street.
up bail money. I put up bail money,
Good.
and supported them in any way I could. But if you are killing you're targeting somebody who's jogging, and you go hunt him down. If you're shooting into people's apartments and you have no business doing that, and you're killing a Brianna, who is just a health worker. I mean, if you're doing that, and we're thinking, I mean, people can't do anything but think, why are you still killing my people? Why? And so that, on top of this pandemic, 2020 was very stressful. I see a little hope in 2021, and thank God we have it.
The only
You know,
thing
Marva, you really bring up a good point. Pandemics are not a stranger to the Native Americans. When you look at the smallpox pandemic, we lost 90% of our population in the 17th century, between 1600 and 1700. We are well aware of the scorched earth policy against Native Americans when they issue bounties for men, women, and children, $25 a scalp. I mean, that's not been that long ago that those practices were in place. And I share your pain. I care for my mother every day. She's 90, and I wouldn't let anybody in the house if you weren't in my bubble. And I mean in the bubble, not on the outside. You didn't come in, because that was my primary concern, to keep her healthy. She's made it this far. Fortunately, I did get her vaccinated. But I hear what you're saying when it comes to the unrest in this country, and it stems from the injustices that these communities have gratefully not grown accustomed to. They're rebelling against it now, and until we get rid of Citizens United, I'll throw that in there real quick. It's going to be a real tough road, because those that are in power are not going to just give it up. They're not just going to roll over and play dead. And unfortunately, nonviolent revolution is a key that we have. And it's a path that we can walk. We've just got to get everybody on that path, because there is strength in numbers. Let's face it, if they just cannot ignore the major part of the population. And I'm not part of that. The American Indian population in the state of Delaware is less than 0.5%. We're very small. And that's why we need to collaborate with organizations like the Concerned Citizens for Environmental Justice, because we don't have the political clout to do it on our own. We need to join those movements and be part of that process. So I hear what you're saying, and unfortunately, a people such as my own that have been living in plain sight for so long. I mean, they learned their lessons very well. If you speak out, then we're going to put you on a train car and ship you to Oklahoma. And worse yet, we may even make you walk there. So we are very quiet as a population. You can't hide in plain sight being real boisterous and loud and vocal. So even today with my training when I was young to be quiet, stay out of trouble, I find it difficult to stand up for myself and stand up for my people, because it's not part of the training that I had. And sometimes I'm very uncomfortable having to play that role, even though I can play it. but it doesn't mean it's a comfort level for me. So I'm going to take the lessons from you guys who who get out there and make it happen and voice your concerns. And I today am trying to connect with my young people to get them involved in some of the STEM curriculums. Because I think that's part of our way out. We need our own experts. We need our own storytellers. Now they've thrown that A into STEAM and made it, or to STEM and made it STEAM. There's such arts are such a strong process for getting messages out to people. So getting our people involved in those art projects. There's a big mural project going on up in Philadelphia right now. That's an environmental justice mural project. They're going to be painting murals all over the city. So those are just all very positive signs that we are making a difference.
Yeah, we are. I just want to say one thing before Miss Dora jumps in, because I know she got something to say. But one of the nicest or fascinating things I saw during the Black Lives Matter movement and all the protests and everything, I saw a Native American girl, Dennis, and she said she was defending a Black woman because somebody was coming out after her because she was protesting. And she said, wait a minute, I'm the first American. Yeah. I'm a Native American, and I'm telling you, you leave her alone. And I said, okay. Yeah. Okay, Native American sister. So she was young, So when they're a little younger, they're a little more,
a little braver.
Boisterous. Yeah. But that made me so proud. I was so happy to see, just filled me with love because she said, and this is, it was from Colorado. So,
Yeah.
All the Pueblos or wherever's there. And it was just very pleased to see. It struck my heart when I saw her do that. Yeah. She couldn't have been more than 20 years old.
Yeah. The spirit of youth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most definitely. Ms. Dora, do you want to talk a little bit? And after Ms. Dora's done, if we have some questions, you guys can go ahead and put them in the chat for our panel. Ms. Dora, talk a little bit about the intersectionality of COVID and environmental justice, maybe even from the area that you live in the community.
Well, it's not too much different than already has been spoken of. We find that in EJ communities, we have lots of things in common. And most of those things are stressors. And Dr. King talked about all these stresses and how they kind of snowball on one another. You start out with maybe you're already susceptible. You've already got something that you don't know where it came from, and it's made you sick. And you're trying to carry on your daily activities of living. And then COVID comes and makes that twice as hard. So now, you might have been struggling to keep your job, but because COVID comes, you lose your job. So now you are out of work, you're sick, and you still need to take care of yourself. You still need to take care of your home. And if you have family members, you still have that obligation or that commitment to take care of those that are underneath you. So these are all stresses. And to even look at the situation and think, I'm not going to come out of this. Or you have someone that you're responsible for that's not going to make it. So I think that's a lot to have to juggle, a lot to have to figure out on your own. And a lot of times we are left on our own to figure it out. But the good thing is, I think one of the things that has come out of COVID is that we have become more caring for one another. We have people who have joined in to pick up groceries and drop groceries off, and all kinds of things have happened that have I always say it's a different worship. It's a totally different worship now. We have church virtually. People can sit in their homes at their tables and go to church. They don't have to struggle to get out. They don't have to, things are just different. And in some ways, it's taught us a good lesson. I'm sorry we had to learn it this way, but in a lot of ways, we listen more to each other now. We have more in common with each other. Folks who the gap between the haves and the have-nots,
Yeah.
that has closed some of that gap because we have something in common. We have an enemy in common. Sometimes when we're left with our own cultures, like Dr. King was saying, the young lady that saw the plight of the Black lady who was in distress. Somebody was going to attack her. She immediately said, "Hey, wait, hold up! You can't do that because I'm here. You want to talk about a first American, you know?" So we have joined forces, and there is strength in numbers. And I think that the worship is higher. The prayers are more in unity. Mm-hmm. I think that the harmonizing, Chief talks about he's down there, but he knows that Delaware Concerned is all over the state. That's something that brings us together for one cause, and that is to make things better for everyone. And so I think that environmental justice, I did at one time, I looked up the word environment, and I think it's the World Health Organization that really actually kind of moved the definition of environment to cumulative impact, because it said environment is just not trees and birds and the earth, but environment is where people interact, it's where they grow, it's where they take care of their children, it's where they live, it's where they leave a legacy.
Yes.
And in Chief's case, he's telling us that they've got 7 generations that they have to take care of. That's a big responsibility. So I actually believe, I really believe, like Congresswoman, if we can hold on to this moment, if we can seize this moment and the hope that it has brought and make it work in the time frame that we are given, I think we're going to make it, and we're going to make it better for those 7 generations.
Absolutely. Thank you,
And we
Ms.
don't
Garth.
want anything better, I don't think.
No, and I was going to say, I know 2020, Dr. King, you talked about, it was a really stressful year. The only thing I think I look at as a positive note is that when we were going through what we were going through, when we watched George Floyd, when we heard about Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, we couldn't go anywhere. Like, everyone had to be still in this moment. And I think when we talk about, I think America is going through a bit of an identity crisis now. And I think that obviously happened for a reason. No one could go to their kids' sporting games, right? No one could escape what was happening. Everyone had to watch it. And so I think that's really important lesson that we can take away from this, is that all of this hope that is now there, I think there are many of us who didn't see before that now see. We should have always seen, but that wasn't the case. And so, I'm so grateful that you guys have that hope, and thank you for being here. There was one question in the chat that popped up that I really would like to get to, and that is, what are some action steps, or what can we do now, as supporters, as people that want to help in the environmental justice fields? What are some concrete steps that we could take? Any one of you can go first.
Yeah, I saw that in the chat, and I also saw someone saying about something else about what we can do. And I think, educate yourself. You need to educate yourself. I mean, the problem with our country, and it's our country, and I have a dad, uncle, late husband, all fought in the wars. There's no reason. I mean, I understand. I had a neighbor that talked to me the same way what you just said, Becca, about I didn't know that was happening until I saw George Floyd. And I love my neighbor, and I'm glad she was comfortable to talk to me about that. But I mean, that cannot be the answer.
Yes.
The answer is to educate yourself. Don't come to me and ask me what you can do. You have a brain. God gave you a brain. When I think about the school system, I mean, any Black person, Latinx person, Native American person will tell you, we grew up not knowing our history in school. Why is that? Learn the true history. Make sure it is discussed and talked about in school. Learn what happened. There are people in this country that don't even believe there was slavery. There was slavery. They were thinking that it was they weren't treated that bad. There's people in this country that don't even know how many people died on that Trail of Tears, how many Native Americans died on that Trail of Tears. And thank God they brought those Native Americans had some Black people with them, walking with them too. So I just think that it is up to you. Don't ask me what to do. Please don't ask me what to do. There are so many things out here you can do. Read, get in book discussions, go to this YWCA 21-day equity challenge. To me, that's a tool. I mean, there's so many tools out here. Don't come on. I'm sorry. I know it's your show, Becca, but I feel really strongly about this.
I Dr. King, I so appreciate you. And I don't want to say you're preaching to the choir because I'm white. You're not well, technically you are because I'm the person. But you're absolutely right.
I'm preaching to the choir. But the thing is that how do you think I felt as a small child? If it wasn't from my parents and we were poor, my mother saved all her pennies so she could buy the Black encyclopedia so we can learn about people that were, and we didn't have that kind of money. She paid on a time thing to make sure her children could read about Black history. I mean, why would you hide that? Why would you prevent children from having that?
Absolutely.
Teach what you're supposed to teach in school to everybody. So everybody will know that we are Americans and we have the right to have as much respect as anybody else. And I'm gonna shut up.
No, I appreciate that. And I'm just gonna give a shout out to Representative Terry Dorsey Walker because she introduced legislation to implement Black History K through 12 in education, and that bill, the committee is up this week. And so, and the Department of Education was behind that. So it looks like it's going to definitely happen. Still, if you'd love to go down to General Assembly, and you can find it on their website if you want to watch that committee hearing. But you're absolutely right. I mean, there is history that we didn't even know was history, right? And like your family taught you history that I mean, everything is whitewashed. I mean, that's the state of our country. It's things are changing. There's a lot of education that needs to happen on our end. There's so much education. But you're right. I didn't mean to say like tell me what to do, but
yeah.
No.
I was reacting. Yeah.
No, I believe me. The thing is, you're right. There's a lot to do, and actually, I think, Ms. Dora, we were talking on the phone today about, and I'm going to say it wrong because it was the first time I had heard of it, and I went and looked it up. The environmental environmental principles.
Yeah, EJ principles.
Yes,
EJ
and it was the first time I'd ever heard that term, and so I went and looked it up, and I was like, wow. And so for those of you that are on here, I'm going to add that link in so that you can go read the environmental principles, which were done. It was like 1991 or 71.
No, I think 91.
91. Okay. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Stephanie. Principles of Environmental Justice and Amene's Principles for Democratic Organizing. Yes. So check those two sources out for those of us that need to be educated in this area. I thought they were brilliant, and Stephanie's given us all the history in here. Thank you. And a shout out to my friend Stephanie Heron, who is part of DRJC and part of Coming Clean. And her and Linda worked really hard to put tonight together. And I am indebted. And I think this was an amazing conversation. So really appreciate all the effort that went into it from you guys.
I'd just like to say one last thing.
Yeah, please. I was just going to say, why don't you guys give us some closing words? So go right ahead.
And that is, I can appreciate where Dr. King is coming from. And I, on the other side of her, ask me what you can do, because I am a person that would really like to invite you and have you do some of the things. I know Stephanie always says, what is the ask? So this is my ask.
Please, yes, give us the ask.
I don't want to leave without asking. This is my ask, is that everyone, anyone that knows about, we'd like for you to come and visit us. It's the third Wednesday of every month for Delaware Concerned Environmental Justice Meeting. It is an awesome meeting. And I'm going to tell you, if it had not been for Delaware Concerned, I would not have met Dr. King. I would not have met Chief today. I would not have met Becca, even though I know Mrs. Troy, Mrs. Farmer. The folks, I would have never have met Michelle Roberts on the back row of the Carvel building, where young people were trying to talk at the meeting and nobody was. I think that was in the 18 election. That's when I think our Attorney General ran for, Kathy Jennings ran for. I met them on that back row, and I'm telling you, we said, let the young people speak, and they did. So when you are knitted with people and you have the same aspirations, that means you have the same breath that you want to give to, the same breath that you want to give to someone else, your neighbor, those that are dying, or those that are under siege from cancer, from the place down the street that's been giving off emissions for the last 50 years, or the land that has been taken away from someone unjustly. You're trying to redeem those kinds of things. You begin to want someone to say, hey, I'm standing next to you. What do you want me to just stand there? Just don't move. Do you know anybody else that wants to stand there?
Yes.
Because what's going to happen is the more we have standing with us, that choir gets so loud until it has to be stopped and heard. Yes. You have to stop to hear. It's like, where's that sound coming from? Where is it coming from? And so they stop to find out where it's coming from, and here we are.
Yeah.
And,
yes.
and her sweet sounding voice.
Amen.
Yes. Yes. That was beautiful, Ms. Dora. And so yeah, for those of us on, I will send you all of the resources that are popping up in the chat in your follow-up email. And Chief Coker, if you kind of would close us out with some of the beauty that you've been speaking this evening. Everything I think that's coming out of your mouth has been amazingly hopeful. And as a woman tonight, I feel a little bit more empowered knowing that the Lenape tribe was matriarchal. So.
Absolutely. Well, I will say that in my view, the EJ movement it should be a very local movement. Because there's where you can make the most difference. I had mentioned earlier about all those red dots on the map, about all those Superfund sites and all that toxicity. There is a site near you somewhere, believe me. There's a stream near you somewhere that needs your attention. So as Dr. King said, that educate yourself. The information is out there. If you can't find it, you're not looking. It's just that simple. There is so much discussion about this topic and there's been so much research done just find yourself a partner and get in there together and get into that local organization and talk to your politicians. And I mean, they've got all the information that you need. So it's there. It's going to take the will to get to the end game. And that's where we're all headed, is to trying to get to that end game. So we're going to need everybody's support. And I think you'll find that there's plenty of support out there if you just join with a group and see what you can get done.
Yes, I love it. So again, I really thank you, Ms. Dora. Thank you, Dr. King. Thank you, Chief Coker. Thank you, Honorable Lisa Blunt Rochester, for being here with us tonight. This was great. This will be available to watch. And so if you missed it or a friend missed it, you guys can get the link and check it out on our YW website. And you guys got me all pumped. And so there's work to be done, people. There's work to be done, whether it's yourself first and then getting plugged in. But we know there's lots of work to be done, or both at the same time, to be honest. Get plugged in and follow and read and educate yourself at the same time. That's what I'm going to say goodnight with. So good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Becky.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.